river still raged even after the banks had pulled back. I saw it before I believed I was really seeing it. A Doberman puppy, barely a month old, clinging with two front paws to a floating plank, body dangling, mouth gaping in a silent cry for help, eyes red, the whole frame trembling like the last leaf in late autumn. The sound of claws screeching against the thin wood pierced like metal in pain. I dove in. The water slammed against my chest, dragged at my legs. "Don't let go," I whispered, breath hissing through my teeth. "Hear me. Don't let go." The evening light slid across the muddy foam and landed on 3 scratches etched into the plank, trembling together to form words. "She's kind." "If you let go, the water decides," I told her, pressing the plank against my hip. "If you hold on, we'll decide." She slipped 1 notch lower. I hooked my arm around her chest just in time and pulled her into me. The water broke away. The whole world shrank to the sound of a heartbeat. My name is Tom Whitaker. I'm 58. After the summer floods in Kerrville, Texas, I volunteered evenings to clear the riverbank. That day, the water left behind many things: a sheet of roofing tin, the bent frame of a bed, a pair of children's shoes without laces, and this little one, too small to understand why she hadn't already sunk. I lifted her onto the slick concrete edge, shrugged off my flannel shirt, and wrapped it around a body no thicker than my forearm. She didn't bark, didn't whimper. She just looked at me, throat twitching as if swallowing a fear it had no name for. Her front paws were swollen from clinging too long. The soft nails scraped white. Her breaths were short, back jerking with each shiver. I turned to the plank that had carried her. The 3 scratches were still there, carved deep, glistening with muddy water. She's kind. Not ink, not chalk. Claw marks. 3 words light enough to drift downstream, heavy enough to anchor the living. Who had written them? I didn't know. Maybe a human hand. Maybe the blind effort of a creature leaving one last act of kindness in chaos. I didn't need the answer just then. "We need a name," I said, letting my voice stand firm in place of her legs. "Rook. Straightforward. Guardian. No retreat." She blinked slowly, as if taking note. I settled Rook in the passenger seat of my pickup, layered towels beneath her. My hand rested lightly on her chest, not pressing, just enough so she'd know I was still there. Rain still pattered on the stone steps outside. Up on the bridge, blue ribbons were tied for the ones who didn't make it. Floods take more than we can count: time, homes, and faith itself. I dialed Marisol Vega from Hill Country Rescue. "Marisol, I've got a newborn Doberman. Hypothermic, possible aspiration. I'm at the Guadalupe near the park stretch." Her voice came rough from too many overnight shifts. "Bring her in now." "Dr. Evelyn Hart is in the ER. Skip the river road. It's still under. Take Sidney Baker to the I-10 frontage. I'll have the gate open." I hung up and started the engine. The dashboard light caught my face and Rook's silent gaze. I turned the radio off. Tonight, the music was too much. The only language between us was presence. Kerrville after the flood felt like a house not yet dried. Water stains on walls, damp wood in the air, rescue trucks crawling slowly through the neighborhoods. I followed Marisol's route. Sidney Baker was still muddy. The tires kicked up gray-brown spray. On the sidewalks, people clutched plastic bins, counting what little remained. An old woman folded her hands in front of a gate with no door. I didn't look long. I had one life to carry through another stretch of road. Rook never looked away from me. Not pleading, not grateful in the human sense, just holding eye contact, the kind that comes when every cry has already been spent and silence is all that works. My throat tightened. It's all right, I said, maybe more to myself. Tonight, the door will be open. A broken cottonwood branch blocked the bend. I eased around it, steering steadily. The smell of mud thinned with the wind. The road firmed beneath the wheels. I glanced over. Rook's breaths had grown longer, steadier. The towel rose and fell with a rhythm almost even. I didn't reach out to touch her. I waited for her to lean first. Dogs that survive floods sometimes fear every hand. Respecting distance can be its own kind of holding on. The sign for Hill Country Rescue appeared in the mist. White neon trembled on the tin roof. The gate already stood wide. Marisol waited, raincoat dripping, eyes widening at the sight of a tiny head above the towel's edge. "My God, she's barely a month," she whispered, backing up to keep the door clear. "Rook," I said, lifting the pup against my chest for warmth. She held on all the way here. Inside, the surgical lights dropped steady beams onto the tile. At the far end, Dr. Evelyn Hart snapped on gloves and looked up with eyes long trained by floods and stories that ended too soon. "Bring her," she said. Calm voice. Not hurried, but wasting no time. "Here, the water doesn't decide." I nodded. My part was clear now. Follow, hold doors, stay put. Rook tucked against me for one more second, then slackened, allowing me to pass her into waiting hands. Some relays don't need words. They just need someone to show up. Before the door closed, I reached for the plank I'd carried from the riverbank. The 3 scratches still shimmered wet under the light. She's kind. I didn't know who had left them. But I knew one thing with certainty. We would live by those 3 words until the pup's breathing was safe, and long after that, the ER door swung open. The surgical light spilled onto tile so clean it felt cold. Dr. Evelyn Hart met us at the threshold, eyes trained by countless flood nights. She wasted no words. "Put her here," she said, pointing to a heated exam table. "Name?" "Rook," I answered. "Good. We'll keep that name." She bent low, her seasoned hands moving across chest, neck, belly. A nurse clipped on the SpO2 monitor. Another placed a blow-by oxygen tube near the pup's nose. The clean smell of alcohol mingled with the mud still clinging to her fur. The SpO2 numbers danced. Ugly numbers. Pale gums, delayed capillary refill. Temperature just red, low. Rook trembled even with the warming pad. Hypothermia. "Severe dehydration," Dr. Hart said evenly. The stethoscope pressed to the little chest. "Crackles in the right lung, likely aspiration pneumonia post-flood. Swollen paws, split nails. No obvious fractures, but I won't trust just my eyes." "What do we do first?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Warm 4 fluids, nebulizer, broad-spectrum antibiotics, chest and abdominal X-ray to check for debris, trapped gas, or partial blockage from swallowed trash. If the belly looks bad, I'll do a minimal access surgery. If the lungs stay dirty, I'll scope and flush them." She lifted her gaze to mine, voice dropping half a pitch. "Your job now is to sit and believe. We'll fight the rest." Her words dropped into me like a latch closing. I nodded. No arguing, no questions to borrow her calm. I stepped back, but kept Rook in sight. Marisol Vega held out a clipboard. "Tom, consent in case we have to operate." "I've got it ready," I signed. The ink sank into the paper like water retreating from silt. As the nurse rolled the X-ray cradle past us, its metal wheels hissed a thin line across the floor. Rook jerked, eyes wide, body sliding toward the table's corner as if to crawl out of the light. Her tremors spiked. Her breath caught. I stepped forward, bent low, turned my back to block the glare, hand hovering near her neck. Not touching, just close enough so she'd know I was still there. No one cages you anymore, I said softly, each word round and slow. Not here. Not while I'm breathing. She looked at me. The tremor stayed but lost its jagged edge. The nurse waited a beat, then moved the cradle on. Dr. Hart glanced over and gave a small nod, a sign we shared the same understanding. Memories of cages can ache like surgical cuts. They laid Rook on her side, the warming pad tucked along her back. The X-ray cassette slid under her tiny belly. Every movement is slow, quiet. No one clattered. No one rushed in panic. The right speed saves more than shouting ever could. The image came up on the screen, a faint shadow in the right lung, like clouds not yet burned off after a storm. The belly didn't look bad, but a pocket of air made Dr. Hart narrow her eyes. She tapped the screen with her pen. I want to watch that abdomen closely. High chance she swallowed nylon or debris. We'll start the nebulizer, antibiotics, and warm fluids. If the belly swells, I go in minimally. If the lungs don't clear, I scope and wash. I listen to each item like steps on a ladder. No skipping, no shortcuts. I propped the plank with its 3 claw marks against the table leg, keeping it in my line of sight. And maybe in Rook's too. She's kind. 3 words standing there, a reminder of what can't be forgotten in a room full of machines. Tom, Dr. Hart called softly. IV's in. She's responding. We'll get her core temp up first, then decide on scoping. You can sit nearby. Don't touch unless she asks. Adults soothe with their hands. Your presence is enough. I pulled a metal chair closer to her head. Marisol handed me a dry blanket. If she tilts her head, offer the back of your hand for her to lean on. That's all. We stayed there a long time, measured by beeps. Outside, light rain fell like someone slowly spelling summer again. Rook opened her eyes. Briefly, a few times. Each time she checked if I was still there. I nodded, said nothing. As the nebulizer mist drifted through the tube, her tiny chest rose and fell, then lowered, as if relearning how to breathe. The temperature crept past the danger line. SpO2 steadied. A nurse brought thin wraps for her paws. Soft nails cracked in one line, pads peeled in tiny bits. She dressed each toe carefully, murmuring just loud enough. Almost there. Just a little more. Rook stayed silent. Silence was still her language. Marisol, I said, eyes never leaving the pup. If she's stable tomorrow, I want to set up a safe corner near the window. No roof, no bars. Just sunlight and a blanket. Marisol gave a tired smile. Do it. Here we don't let water decide. We don't let cages decide either. Dr. Hart returned from a short call, scanned the monitor, then looked at me. Progress just enough to hope. But I'm keeping scope on the table tonight if the lung doesn't open as we want. Until then, you sit and believe. Deal? I nodded. My chest felt cinched, then released. I saw her cling to life in the water. If she has to go further, I'll cling with her. Rook tilted her head. This time she leaned on her own. I offered the back of my hand for her chin, light as laying a leaf into an aging palm. At the foot of the table, the 3 claw marks caught the light. She's kind. I don't know who left them, but I know tonight we'll live those words. Inside every beep, every breath, every silence we hold intact. Dawn poured through the thin curtain in the recovery room. The monitor kept its steady beep. Beep. Like someone tapping time to an old song. Dr. Evelyn Hart held up her pen light and checked the chart again. Temperature's up, she said. SpO2 looks better. We'll keep antibiotics, a nebulizer, and close watch. If the lung doesn't open further, scoping stays on the table. I nodded. Then I'll sit and believe for another day. She gave a faint smile. Another morning with sunlight helps. I found Marisol Vega in storage. Let me borrow bolt cutters, some soft mesh, and heavy blankets. I want to build Rook a safe corner by the window. She raised an eyebrow. No roof. No bars. Right. Just sunlight and blankets. Take it. Here, we don't let cages decide. I dismantled an old kennel piece by piece, tossed the iron frame, and kept the rubber edges so nothing would scrape skin. I stretched soft mesh into a low circle, no higher than my knee, spread thick blankets over a slip-proof pad, and set it by the east-facing window, where the first sliver of sunlight was crawling across the floor. At the blanket's edge, I placed the river plank, 3 claw marks turned inward, so when Rook lifted her head, she'd see them. Rook was lying on the warming pad, breathing thin. I asked Dr. Hart, "Can we move her now?" "Yes," she nodded. 2 people. Avoid the rattle of wheels. Don't let her see a kennel roll by." Marisol signaled a nurse to lift her straight with a large towel. I walked ahead, blocking the overhead lights, speaking just loud enough. "Rook, we're only moving to where there's sun, no bars. I'm here." We set her down in the sunlit corner. She stiffened for half a beat, then relaxed, as if she understood the ceiling above was open sky. The oxygen tube shifted slightly, and the nebulizer mist drifted like fog. "Try warm replacer milk, very small amounts," Dr. Hart instructed. "Soft syringe tip. Slow. If her belly bloats, stop." Marisol handed me a tiny syringe. Patiently, I eased out drops. Rook managed a few laps, swallowed slowly, and had no cough. We looked at each other. One rung of the ladder climbed. I sat across the corner, the back of my hand resting near the blanket's edge. Not touching, only inviting. Rook tilted her head, placed her chin there as if laying a leaf into an old hand. Her breaths lengthened. Her tail flicked. 3 beats, enough to crack something in my chest. A shard of armor breaking loose. I looked out of the yard. Kerrville, after the flood, still smelled of damp wood and lime walls. Blue ribbons fluttered on the bridge rail. I thought of my father, the man who taught me never to walk away when a door cracks open. Today, the door had opened just enough for sunlight to slip through. By midday, Marisol leaned in. "This afternoon, a group of 5th graders will tour the garden. I'll keep Rook's area quiet. You all right with that?" I considered. 5 minutes. No touching unless invited. No noise. She nodded. "I'll filter the group. Only the gentle ones." 3 o'clock. The garden lay cool in the shade. Wooden benches were arranged in a half circle, far enough to respect the sunlit corner. 7 kids sat down. At the edge, a girl clutched her sleeve tight, eyes lowered. Ellie, 10 years old, silent since a spring accident. I told them very briefly, "Here, you don't need to pat, don't need to call. Just sit and breathe together. If nothing happens today, that's fine. Some things need time." Rook ignored the noisiest kids. She turned, slid half a handspan off her blanket, and lay down, right before Ellie, but holding distance. No demand, no display, just presence. 1 minute passed, 2. I heard the porch fans spin and the leaves slap against each other. Ellie lifted her eyes for a moment, then dropped them. Her hand loosened its grip on her sleeve, halfway. Rook didn't move. Marisol whispered behind me, "If she doesn't speak, don't press." "Right," I said. "Being here is already a word." At the 3rd minute, Ellie shifted and dropped to one knee on the grass. Her small hand rested inside the mesh rim, not touching Rook, just near, like practicing how to speak. Rook exhaled, closed her eyes briefly, then opened them slowly. Her tail flicked 3 small beats. "You can say one word," I whispered, almost into the air between them. "Or none." Both are fine. Ellie's lips moved, no sound. She swallowed, drew a deep breath. Her hand edged 1 inch closer. Rook stayed. Just then, down the hall, a kennel cart rolled past. The thin metal screech sliced through. I saw Rook's shoulders lock. Her eyes flinched back into memory. I bent low, blocked the glare, spoke just enough. "No one cages you again." "Not here," Marisol signaled the nurse to halt the wheels. Silence returned. Ellie raised her head. A whisper, fragile as tissue, dropped into the garden. "Stay." 2 syllables were enough to tilt the whole afternoon. Rook stayed still. She honored the word. I felt my throat dry. Dr. Hart stood on the porch, arms folded, lips curved like someone who'd just seen the last shaft of sunlight break through the clouds. The 5 minutes ended as softly as a cat's step. The children rose. No chair scrape, no waving hands. Ellie was last to stand and gave Rook one long look. No speech, just a small nod. When the yard cleared, I sat back where I'd been, the back of my hand extended again. Rook rested her chin there, heavier now by half her weight. I glanced at the plank by the blanket's edge. The 3 claw marks caught the sun into a streak of light. In the small room at Hill Country Rescue in flood-worn Kerrville, Faith had found a place to lie down. No bars, no roof, just sunlight, and 2 beings learning to be still together. Evening dropped over Kerrville as fast as someone pulling a gray curtain across the sky. The garden was empty. Damp wind carried the smell of wet wood and plaster. I sat in the sunlit corner with no bars, Rook resting her chin on the back of my hand, her breathing steadier than it had been that morning. I thought I could finally let my shoulders ease, when the sound of a kennel cart down the hall sliced a thin line into the air. Rook jolted hard, her whole body locked. Breaths fractured. The monitor screamed, SPO2 plunging several steps at once. I turned to block the light, lowered my voice to a promise. "No one cages you again." Not here. Not while I'm breathing. Dr. Evelyn Hart came in almost instantly, eyes sweeping the numbers. "Mask her. Up the flow." A nurse fitted the tiny face mask. Cool air spread around her muzzle. Dr. Hart listened with her stethoscope. Crackles louder in the right lung, breathing fast, some retraction. Abdomen. She pressed gently, waiting for the reflex. More distended than this morning. "We're going in with a scope?" My voice sounded dry as old wood. "Tonight," she said. "I'll bronch and lavage the lungs to clear mud and grit. If the belly doesn't decompress after intubation and adjustments, I'll make a minimal incision and take the foreign body out. No delay. At 1 month old, we don't lose her to hesitation." Marisol Vega appeared with a clipboard. "Tom, consent for both interventions." I signed. This time, the ink didn't blur. My hand held steady, as if my body had learned faith since morning. Rook still trembled, but her eyes carried less panic when I kept the right distance. I whispered just for her. "You clung through the flood. For this part, let us cling with you." They moved her onto a small stretcher wrapped in blankets, careful to keep all kennel wheels out of sight. The hall stretched bright and long, rain tapping the tin roof, the last sound of flood season. The handheld monitor beeped in rhythm, not rushed, not slow. Pre-op room. Dr. Hart crouched eye level with Rook, her voice another blanket. "Brave girl. We'll wash your lungs. If needed, clear your belly. Warm and safe." She turned to me. "Bring the plank into waiting. Keep it near. Don't step out of my call." I nodded, holding the board carved with 3 claw marks. She's kind. The wet grain had dried at the edges, but the memory on it stayed fresh. I pressed my palm over the KA like flipping a switch. In my head, I heard myself again at the riverbank. If you let go, the water decides. If you hold on, we'll decide. Here, the instruments would finish what the water started. The OR door closed. The amber light clicked on. I sat on a plastic chair, the board balanced between my knees. Marisol set a warm coffee can in my hand and slipped away like a lamp dimming low. Time in a hospital doesn't flow like it does on the street. It ticks. Beep, beep, beep. Each one is like a raindrop that never wets. I stared at the space ahead and spoke silently to Rook about the 3 steps on my porch where afternoon sunlight always paused, about the habit of leaving my boots facing the door so morning wouldn't lose its way, about my father and his last instruction, never walk away when a door cracks open. The door shifted. The anesthesiology nurse came out, voice soft. Scope is pulling out fine silt and small debris. Good response. I drew a breath, nodded. My hand tightened on the board, fingers grazing. She's kind of like beads on a rosary. 15 more minutes passed, marked on beeps. The rain thinned. Dr. Hart pushed through the door, her eyes bright but grounded. Lungs are clear, ventilation improved. Abdomen still distended on monitoring, so I did a minimal exploratory, removed a scrap of nylon lodged in the small intestine, flushed, closed, stable. I leaned back as if setting down a weight I hadn't known I was hauling. Thank you, doctor. She smiled faintly. Now, recovery and waiting. You sit and believe, all right? All right, I said. I've gotten good at that. When they wheeled Rook out, she was asleep under warm blankets, oxygen tubing in place, a small bandage on her belly, neat as a dash. I walked close, near enough to keep telling her the story of my porch, of where the light would land for her to lie in, of floodwaters gone, but kindness that stayed. The sunlit corner without bars waited. I set the plank at the blanket's edge. 3 claw marks turned inward. The recovery lights dimmed. The monitor slowed. Deeper. Steadier. I sat. And believed. At Hill Country Rescue in Kerrville, fresh from flood season, a soul had passed through water and steel toward the light. My part now was clear, to stay until Rook opened her eyes and chose to look at me again. Early morning at Hill Country Rescue. The rain had stopped. The recovery room glowed soft yellow, like a kitchen lamp switched on before dawn. The monitor tapped a slow rhythm, the blow-by oxygen drifting a thin fog around Rook's muzzle. She slept deeply, belly wrapped in a neat bandage like a dash. I sat angled at her bedside, the wooden plank with 3 claw marks, she's kind, propped at the blanket's edge, turned inward. Dr. Evelyn Hart checked first, speaking just loud enough for me to hear. Temperature's holding. SpO2 is stronger after the scope. Abdomen soft, no new distension. I've ordered light analgesics, antibiotics, and a continuous nebulizer. We'll watch her eat again, drop by drop. I'll sit and believe, I said. She nodded. That's right. The day's first light slipped through the curtain. When the sun reached the edge of the blanket, Rook stirred. Her eyelids flickered twice, then opened just enough to find me. I said nothing, only nodded. She let out a thin sigh, the sound of someone who had walked through the storm and made it out. Marisol Vega brought a tray of warm replacer milk and a soft-tipped syringe. 1 drop at a time. If she coughs or her belly swells, stop. I crouched low, eased out a drop. Rook licked it, swallowed, waited. Another drop, swallowed. No cough. Belly calm. Marisol smiled. Good girl. I exhaled, not knowing how long I'd been holding my breath. I pulled a chair near the sunlit corner I'd built the day before. No roof, no bars, just blankets and light. I placed the back of my hand at the blanket's edge, not touching. Rook tilted her head, laid her chin there as if finding her rightful pillow. Her tail tapped 3 beats. Small, but it was our own anthem. At noon, Dr. Hart returned to check vitals. "Better," she said. "By tonight, if the lungs sound cleaner, I'll lower the oxygen. Tomorrow, we'll consider removing the short protective collar during care." "Thank you, doctor." She looked at the plank, then at me. "Keep that here. I need the reminder, too, to move slow and stay kind." That afternoon, the garden door opened. No school group this time, just a mother holding the hand of a young girl at the porch's edge. Carolyn froze at the sight of wires and lights. Ellie pulled her hand into her sleeve again. Marisol leaned close to me. "They came back after yesterday." Want to stand quietly from a distance, if allowed, I nodded. No touching. No noise. We didn't call them in. Rook lay still, eyes half open, listening to the wind brushing the tin roof. Ellie didn't step forward. She only stood beneath the porch shadow. After a few seconds, Rook turned her head toward her. She didn't rise, just looked. Distance intact. Presence enough. Carolyn wiped her eyes. "She hasn't spoken since the accident," she whispered to Marisol. "Yesterday at home, she wrote one word on paper. Stay." I heard it fall into place like a latch sliding into its groove. I didn't answer. Here, many things spoke by not speaking. By evening, Dr. Hart listened to Rook's lungs again. "Clearer," she concluded. "Drop the oxygen 1 notch. Tonight we'll still watch every breath. Tomorrow, if the line holds, more time in the sun." "Yes," I said. "I'll be here." Night settled gently over Kerrville, like the river gone calm after flood. I slid my chair close to the sunlit corner, now lit by a lamp instead. Rook slept, chin still on the back of my hand. At the blanket's edge, the 3 claw marks caught a sliver of glow. I thought of my father and his words. Don't walk away when the door cracks open. Tonight, the door had opened another finger's width. Enough to stay. Enough to believe. Tuesday morning, 3 days after surgery, Hill Country Rescue opened early. Kerrville was dry, the sun gentle. Rook lifted her head when I stepped into the sunlit corner without bars, her tail tapping 3 small beats against the blanket. Dr. Evelyn Hart listened to her lungs and nodded. Clearer. Keep a light nebulizer. Feed drop by drop, and 5 minutes in the yard when the wind is still. At 10, Marisol Vega brought in a young family of 4, parents and 2 kids. They had seen Rook's photo on the information board. Marisol leaned close to me. They'd like to meet her. I nodded. The procedure was the procedure. In the garden, Rook sat politely, taking a treat with a gentle mouth. The younger boy, delighted, rushed forward and threw his arms around her neck. Rook froze half a beat, her eyes pulling back as if she'd just heard kennel wheels again. I was about to speak, when the back porch door opened. Carolyn and Ellie stood at the edge of the sunlight. We didn't call them. Ellie just watched. Rook turned. No bark, no struggle. She slipped from the boy's hasty embrace, walked 4 slow steps toward Ellie, then lay down, keeping the same respectful distance as before. Ellie pushed her sleeve back a half inch and placed her hand on Rook's cheek. No words. Rook's tail tapped 3 beats. The yard hushed like a chapel. The other parents understood at once. The mother gave a sad smile, pulled her son back, and whispered, I think this girl has already chosen. They thanked us and withdrew their file. Marisol exhaled and turned to Carolyn. If you'd like, we can begin the paperwork. Carolyn hesitated. I'm afraid of the noise. Ellie can't take it. Dr. Hart stepped in, voice warm. Rook doesn't heal with noise. She heals by being still. We'll monitor one more day, then hand over her medical care. I set the wooden plank with the 3 scratches, she's kind, at the blanket's edge. Ellie brushed the K with her finger and gave a small nod. In Kerrville's noon sunlight, there were no drums, no triumphal marches. Only 2 souls are looking at each other and choosing. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. The next morning, Dr. Evelyn Hart made her final check. Lungs are clear, incision healed well. I'll taper the meds and give you home care instructions. She's ready to go. Marisol Vega laid a stack of papers on the table. Medication schedule, follow-up dates, the overnight hotline number. A small brown harness. I added a thick blanket. On its edge, the wooden plank with 3 claw marks, she's kind, stood like a silent farewell. Carolyn signed, her hand trembling. Ellie stood beside her, hands still hidden in her sleeves. I hesitated a moment at the plank, thinking I should leave it behind for the rescue. But Rook leapt forward, gripped the edge, tugged it down, and placed it at Ellie's feet. The girl touched the K, lifted her eyes. A single tear fell onto the wood, spreading into a streak of light. We stepped onto the porch. Kerrville's sun was gentle, and blue ribbons on the bridge railing swayed in the breeze. Dr. Hart bent down to Ellie's level. At home, read to Rook. She likes being still. Ellie swallowed once, then spoke, clear as a morning bell. Home. Carolyn covered her mouth and broke into tears. I turned half away, letting my own tears fall in silence. Before crossing the gate, Rook glanced back. Her tail tapped 3 beats in the air, our private goodbye. I lifted 2 fingers, my answer, go. Stay still together. That afternoon my phone buzzed. A video, a bedroom washed in golden light, Ellie sitting cross-legged on the rug, reading a page aloud, 1 line at a time. Rook's head on her lap, eyes half closed. Carolyn's caption, she's reading again, because Rook stays. I stood on my porch, watching the sunlight pause on the steps. I thought of my father. Never walk away when the door cracks open. Today, the door stood wide. We don't always rescue a dog. Sometimes the dog rescues us. And if anyone asks why she survived the flood, I'll point to the 3 scratches on the wood. She's kind. If this story brought you to tears, please subscribe. Your single click is another chance at life. Turn on the bell so you won't miss the next rescue, where every stay can give someone their voice back. Share this video so kindness can travel farther than any floodwaters ever could.